Well, residential buildings and civilian facilities have been heavily damaged in strikes across southern and central Israel. The army says it's investigating failures in its air defense systems.
In every event, even in successes, we investigate the entire chain of performance, from the detection to the interception, discover new things, do corrections, and adapt to the situation. The Air Force is managing a complex defensive battle. More than 90% of the launches fired at Israel are intercepted.
Let's now speak to Abed Abou Shhadeh about this. He's joining us from Haifa. He's a political commentator. Thank you so much for your time. How much concern is there among Israelis about the fact that Iranian missiles are managing to get through the much vaunted air defense systems and causing so much damage in places like Arad or even Dimona, where Israel's nuclear program is located?
Thank you. And first and foremost, thank you for having me and good morning. I think the whole situation is absurd inside the Israeli society, who are not asking the correct questions and taking into consideration the Iranian attack and Iranian missile capabilities. Israelis are paying the price. And instead of asking for proper solution, everybody is obsessed, even the Israeli opposition leaders, over what kind of air defense missiles do they have and how could they protect themselves even more, where if you go through all of the military commentators, they were expecting this. And they knew there was going to be a price to pay. And Israelis are paying a price. Now, if you take into consideration last few days, there are tens of Israeli families who are now homeless, hundreds of people who are at the hospital right now. But unfortunately, the Israeli mindset right now is just focusing on military capabilities without asking the right question over what is the purpose of the war. We're entering the fourth week, and throughout all of four weeks, Israelis are not going to work.
Right.
Many Israelis don't have any bomb shelters, and they are paying the price for it.
What do you think it's going to take to change the Israeli mindset, as you put it? What would be a red line for Israelis in this war?
I'm extremely worried because the Israeli reaction is more military intervention, and they're now pushing down on the American administration to forcibly open the Strait of Hormuz and ground invasion in Iran. You would expect now, through what we've seen in the past 4 weeks, and take into consideration Hezbollah's military capabilities after a year and a half where Israeli commentator kept saying that the Hezbollah lost all of their military capabilities, obviously it's not working. And now they're expecting to use even more force and more power and more violence, which is extremely worrying because we are on the path of escalation that everybody will eventually pay the price, not only the Israelis, Iranian, or the Palestinians, but the global economy, the energy economy. And from the Israeli perspective, this is what they see as a solution. In front of any backlash from the Iranians, more escalation and more violence.
But as we see now, there is no solution. No one knows how this is going to end, which brings me back to my question. What do you think it's going to take for the Israeli public, ordinary Israelis, to reconsider this position and perhaps put more pressure on their government and their military to stop these wars, not just in Iran, as we've seen, but also in Lebanon?
Unfortunately, now it's up to the American administration because, as I said earlier, if you look at the opposition leaders, this is by definition their work to set alternative to the current government. And Naftali Bennett, former prime minister, and Yair Lapid are obsessed over justifying the war. Now, neither is the Israeli media. The Israeli media is obsessed as well of what kind of missile did the Iranians use or not use, while not asking nobody in Israel even knows what's the purpose of the war. They keep changing it. At the beginning, they were talking about regime change. It didn't happen. Then they moved on into talking about the missile capabilities of Iran. And now they've changed into opening the Strait of Hormuz. Nothing is clear. Nobody's asking the proper question. And unfortunately, the Israeli society is obsessed with this Spartan-like reality. And at the same time, if you look at what's happening in Gaza and what's happening in the West Bank, since the beginning of the war, 8 Palestinians were killed by settlers. And for the Israeli public, nobody's asking the question. And it's like a very absurd type of reality. Unfortunately, unless the American administration or unless the international community put an end to this war, from the Israeli perspective and from the Israeli public opinion, now we have to take into consideration majority of the Israelis are in active duty during the war. Since the beginning of the war of Iran, 100,000 Israelis were drafted into the military, apparently in what looks now into a ground invasion to Lebanon. And they're not asking the questions, and it keeps going into an escalation path. And while they're paying the price from Iran, now they're talking about focusing more on Lebanon.
Right.
And the Israeli society, we're used to accepting this.
Thank you so much for talking to us about this and bringing us to view there. From Haifa, that's Abed Abou Shhadeh, a political commentator joining us on Al Jazeera.